Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Perla.
And my name is Janet Carr. Welcome to another episode of the Woman in 3D Printing podcast. In spirit of the upcoming TIPE 3D Printing virtual conference taking place January 27th to 28th next year, 2021, we are going to be dedicating the first series to the TIPE. So you might be wondering, what is the TIPE? TIPE represents the tracks for the conference: technology, industry, people, and economics.
And as your hosts, we are so excited to share our conversations with these trailblazing women. The all female speaker lineup we have prepared for this conference is made up of women that have carved their careers in additive manufacturing and have inspired all of us. We can't wait to introduce them to you so you can get to know them before the conference.
So we invite you to hit that subscribe button, follow us on LinkedIn, and get to know the stories of these awe-inspiring women before the event.
We'd also like to give a shout out to our platinum sponsors, HP, Trumpf, Matter Hackers, GE Additive, and Dassault for making all of this even possible. Today's guest is Lee Batch Nelson. She is the co-founder and VP of Business of Leo Lane. She's a board member of Elton Electronics Industries, and she's also a board member of Ore to Excellence. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good
Thank
to
you
be
so
here.
much. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited.
So am I. I think Women in 3D is an amazing initiative. I'm always happy to participate.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive in because we were talking. Lee and I were talking a little bit before this, and I think that we could have gone on for a few hours. So I'm excited to dive in and talk more. Okay, so first question. What launched your career into AM? You told me a little bit before this that you were in venture capital before this. So like what caused you to get into AM?
So the first fund I was a partner in invested in object geometries, which is known today as Stratasys.
Oh.
Yes. And and I actually became a partner in that fund 20 years ago. And they invested even before I joined. So this was a very early investment, and I've been following this industry for 20 years now.
Oh.
So I kind of and I initially got into it because, as a venture capitalist, you invest in a lot of things. It wasn't the only investment we had, and certainly we didn't have any other 3D printing investments. But 3D printing at the time, and especially the object technology, it was like a miracle. It was like magic because they have these tiny drops that you can't see. So there's nothing there. The machine hems and haws, and suddenly there's something there, and you didn't see anything being deposited, and it's like magic.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest, the first time that I saw this, I made them operate the machine with the closet doors underneath where you store the things open, just to see that nothing's coming out from below, because it looked like magic.
Wow.
So I was fascinated from the first moment. I thought it was amazing, and I thought that there could be so many possibilities, but 20 years ago, there were so many problems too.
Yeah.
And
I
there were
bet.
chemical problems, physics problems, keeping the nozzle open and running was a thing. And so, until you solve all these problems, you can't even think about manufacturing and production and stuff like that. And so, I don't need to tell you the ecosystem has come a very, very long way since then. So,
It has. So what was your first position in 3D printing and additive manufacturing?
so my first position, so to speak, was as an investor. And I actually went through with this investment for years afterwards. And then later on, I had a short period where I was doing other venture capital. I changed funds, and that fund actually didn't invest in 3D printing. And so I had a period where I was away, and then I went to do business development in a company that did some R&D in 3D printing, and didn't actually come out with a print, actually metal 3D printing. but you know, I did business development and I was very involved in kind of everything that was going on. And so I again was very involved in the market. And I, you know, as a venture capitalist, you're very sensitive to trends and to where the market is going. And you're also, you meet a lot of people. So you hear stuff. So and one of the things I was hearing about is that quietly, and this was very quietly, 3D printing started being used for end parts. And, you know, the hype at the time was about home 3D printing, which I wasn't so excited about, but this was what, you know, everybody was excited about at the time. But I heard about hearing aids that in the US went to 100% additively manufactured in under 500 days. That's, think about it, 0 to 100% in under 500 days. That's like a year and a half. That's nothing. And but this happened very quietly. Nobody made noise about it. Nobody talked about it. There was a Harvard Business Review, I think, case or something. It was quiet. And then I heard these rumbles about GE and about them creating this fuel nozzle that's unbelievable and is going to go into jet engines. That's not a simple thing. So I said to myself and to my partner, wow, this is the true, you know, when my eyes were shining about 3D printing, it wasn't about prototyping. It was about, you know, the possibilities. You couldn't do it technically back then, but, you know, the idea was mind-boggling. And here it's starting to happen.
Yep.
And now you think about it and you're saying, wait a minute, parts are not like prototypes. Prototypes, you can give a prototype and say to a person, imagine that it's slightly more red or smoother or 10% smaller. And that's okay for a prototype. It's not okay for an end part.
No.
And the other thing is, an end part has to be produced repeatably and consistently.
Right.
And if you can't do that, then you can't go into manufacturing. Manufacturing is a boring thing. It has to be the same. It's not about, you know, wacko outcomes and saying, oh, look how cool this happened. No, it has to be consistent, repeatable, boring. We want to be boring as an ecosystem. If we become boring, then we've succeeded.
Yes.
Because we've become another manufacturing technology. Nobody thinks about injection molding as, you know, will it come out right? Of course it will come out right.
Yes.
So,
oh my gosh.
So that was kind of how I got into, I took you all the way to Leo Lane.
Yeah.
This is what Leo Lane is here to do. Leo Lane is here to ensure repeatability and consistency. And it's here to secure IP and allow people to securely share knowledge. That's the other thing. This ecosystem is so fragmented. If we don't share knowledge, the ecosystem will not advance as fast. And of course, people are worried, you know, if you've spent a lot of work and money developing this know-how and this IP, you're not just going to give it away. So you have to have a way to securely share it and not lose control over it. And that's kind of the whole gamut of what Leo Lane offers. And this is why we founded this company, because we believe in this ecosystem.
Right.
And we think it's going to be, it already is, but it'll be even more unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow. I was really particularly struck with what you said about the industry becoming boring, meaning, and that's like the measure of success, really, because you don't hear people talking about injection molding, roto molding, blow molding with such excitement as they do with 3D printing. But I think that's the name in itself, right? The word printing in itself makes you think of your paper printer, and automatically you're connecting those dots when that's not really that's not really
what I
what.
usually say additive manufacturing. I think it's the more correct expression.
For sure.
And the other thing is, it's not just getting excited about additive manufacturing or about injection molding. If you ask anyone who's getting a part how it was manufactured, they don't know and they don't care.
Yes.
And but when it's 3D printed, you go, oh, look here, like I have rings that are 3D printed. Look, I always have something 3D printed on me. But but other people too, they'll go, oh, it's 3D printed. I want it to be boring. I want it to be, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
This is the manufacturing method of choice for certain things, by the way, not for everything. The people that think that everything will be 3D printed, they're setting themselves up for failure. And similarly, there are all these people that think that you'll print every organ you're missing in your body. I hope one day, but frankly, I really don't think in my lifetime.
Same.
I mean, I would love for there to be technology that can 3D print a kidney, for example. That would save so many lives. But it's not easy. That's not something that I see in the next 5 years. I mean, I hope I'm wrong here, because this would be unbelievable.
Right.
But
Right.
I think it'll happen, but it'll take time, because
Right.
these things have to be developed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Wow. I'm very inspired. Okay. I hope our audience is, no, I know our audience will be as well. Okay. So you kind of went into the next question a little bit, but maybe we can expand on it a little bit more. What are some challenges in additive manufacturing that you're looking to overcome? We talked about sharing of knowledge securely, and we also talked about the proper use of the term and getting, like, quote unquote boring.
Yeah. So I think there are several things. So first of all, in terms of our company, we're going for the knowledge sharing. We're also going for securing the IP. We're going for tracking, which you need for like certification. So for example, to be a proper manufacturing technology, you have to be able to certify. Now, what's the problem with that?
Yeah.
We all know, right? Because in injection molding, you certify the line, and then the line goes boom, 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 like this, and does a million of them, and they're all certified, okay? But in 3D printing, you're gonna print 1 now, 2 next week, 5 in another location, and then 20,000 next month. It's not, and you can't bring a certification agency every time you decide to switch what you're printing. The whole idea of printing is that it's versatile and you can change it, and it's a low switching cost. So in that case, how are you going to certify? So one of the ways that you can certify is you certify a very precise process, and then you can use Relay to see what actually happened and show that it was done based on the certification for each and every part. And now in 3D printing and additive manufacturing, you have to show it for every part, because they might be different. If somebody printed something in the middle and changed the settings on the printer, it's not the settings that the certifier saw anymore. So what? The certification is per part? That's exorbitantly expensive.
Yes.
So certification is one. It all has to do with this boring theme.
Right. Scalable, really. Scalable.
Yeah, exactly. It should be scalable. It should be repeatable. It should be a no-brainer. You don't need to think about it as much. The other thing is also the applications go like this. One of my pet peeves is that there's a really nice application for 3D printing. It's called tooling. But again, tooling is not spare parts. Spare parts are perceived as more, dare I say, sexy. And tooling is boring. But it's a very good application. Jigs and fixtures are very well suited for AM, as a rule. I'm not saying every single one, of course not. And it's a fairly large market, and it already has traction in AM. So this is something that, I would have expected people to push a little bit more. But somehow it doesn't seem so, so when I tell people, they're like, oh, yeah, tooling. But that's a good thing, I think. So those are some things I'm looking forward to. And not in the very distant. In the very distant, I think the medical can be, wow.
Yeah.
But again, I'm afraid mostly not in my lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you said that about the tooling, because even like at Makelab, we just have low desktop machines, but people still are even doing like printing tooling
Of
for
course.
for their parts. And it's such a thing. Like if you come from any engineering or making or some sort of building background, even industrial design, you've experienced the quality of a part that you're making, like a model that you're making without proper jigs and fixtures to make sure
Mhm.
things are aligned. But it's not talked about enough. And that's
That's
like a
right.
huge market. I mean, floor.
Yeah. So
Pretty
I
cool.
think that whatever the technology, and you're right, it can be a desktop FDM machine, can do very good tooling.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference. But now, again, imagine, even on tooling, if you have more than one line, you want the tooling to be the same in all lines.
Yep.
If you have a tool that if it breaks, it stops the production line, you want to make sure that it's the right strength. That means correct settings on the printer. So
Yep.
all of these things kind of we help with, so that it stays consistent. Because, in the automotive industry, if you stop a car assembly line, let's say because a tool broke, the cost is $22,000 a minute. A minute.
I don't think my brain can even like calculate that.
Yeah, I can tell you an unrelated to AM anecdote, but related to this.
You're right.
A while ago, I think maybe 6 months ago, or before this whole COVID thing, a couple of drunk guys got into a BMW assembly line and halted it for a few hours, and because they were drunk, okay, and BMW sued them and claimed that the damages for, I think it was 2 or 3 hours, were 3 million euro.
Oh my God.
And I'm not sure what happened with that. I don't remember, but just to give you kind of how expensive it is when something goes wrong. So you need to really make sure that AM can deliver, because
For sure.
if you glitch, it leaves a bitter taste and people will be reluctant to try it again. So you
Right.
have to make sure it's done right the first time.
Right.
Every time the first time.
Right. I completely agree with that. You want someone's first experience with AM to be a good one. That's how
Yeah, exactly.
how we increase adoption rate, right?
Exactly. And the
Yeah.
other thing I always try to tell people is don't like plan the dream, the huge complicated thing that has 15 gazillion moving parts, and they all have to align for it to give you the bang that you want. Try to find an early win and even a small win, but an early win where you can define something very small and well defined and show a win. And from there you can go on. So if you're talking about tooling, for example, just because we were, pick one jig, one fixture. Let's just try just that one, or 5 if you think you want to be more representative. But don't pick 300. Don't start with 300. Do
Yeah.
5 and then go to 300. And on the way you'll learn. You'll see that, for example, you may have some systems that you want to integrate into this process so that people can order these things, for example, or people can share if they, a lot of these jigs are invented by the people on the line where they see they need it. And now the person on the line in another country needs it just as much. So how is it going to, so you could share it with them, and even within the same organization. So all these things you need to think about, and getting that through steps that are wins is a much better way to go, I think.
So going on that, I guess, were there any big milestones where you really learned about AM, maybe through something that didn't go as planned, for casual terms, like a failure that turned into a success?
So I think that all of it is like a path of these little failures and successes, and you have to learn from all of them, the failures and the successes. Also, even a success, normally you can learn something to do better.
Right.
And at the very least to know that this worked, but normally you can also learn something to do better. I can tell you, we started off thinking about small designers. And we were called Make It Leo before we were called Leo Lane. That we were founded as Make It Leo, and it was good for small designers. But the problem was that the amount of hand holding, so to speak, hand holding is not the best expression, but the amount of conversation and
Like
and
guidance.
effort
Yeah.
that you need to put in is very similar for a small designer and for a large corporation. So you naturally shift towards this. So perhaps when we started, the other thing is when we started off, I have two co-founders. One is a very seasoned executive that's an expert in software as a service, probably Israel's foremost expert in software as a service. And those people that think you just take on-premise software and stick it in the cloud and that makes it SaaS, not so much. So there's a lot of expertise that goes into it. So he brought that. He's also a very seasoned executive. He's our CEO. His name is Moshe Molcho. And we have a third co-founder because we felt that we really don't understand well enough the customer. So remember, at the time, it was these designers, but even if you think about the industrial players, you have engineers and industrial designers that are actually making these parts, and they own these parts. And there are very few high-tech companies, certainly in Israel, that sell to a product organization, not to IT, not to like the manufacturing floor.
Right.
So you have to understand who you're serving. So our third co-founder is an industrial design expert. Her name is Tessa Blokland. She's Dutch. She's amazing. You would enjoy talking with her, I'm sure.
I think I'm an industrial designer too, so we
Oh,
could
you are?
definitely,
Well,
yeah.
even more. But no, she's an amazing, wonderful lady. I absolutely love her. And you can tell we get along really, really well.
Yeah.
But so we really, what I was trying to say is, you really have to, we figured out that was something that we were missing. So I wouldn't call it a failure per se, but I would call it a failing.
Mm.
And you have to ameliorate these things. And
For
so
sure.
one of the ways that we did this is we always, I would always look for a founding team that's well balanced. It's like not all the same. Like
Right.
some teams are all the same, so they get along really well because they all think the same thing. But if they all think the same thing, you don't get a plurality of views, and you don't get a plurality of points of view. And so for us, it was important to have three different people. And, of course, the company has grown since then, and we've always tried to add people not the same. So, with the right skills, I'm not saying
Yeah.
just pick somebody off the street. No, they have to be amazing and excellent at what they do.
Right.
But try not to have it be cookie cutter and everybody exactly the same, because then you get a plurality. And also listen to everybody. I think that's another thing. Yeah, I'm sure there were plenty of failures, but nothing else comes to mind at the moment.
That, as you were talking, it's just like that's just a lot of what I personally believe as well. I believe the more that you bring people that you don't quite understand maybe fully because they're coming from different backgrounds, but the more you can go into that with like a learning attitude, I think that's the key to making this industry more diverse, more inclusive, and also increasing adoption rate, like increasing the bottom line. That's key.
Absolutely. And I think it really does help. And everybody says always you have to understand your customer, you have to know your customer, but it's not just your customer, it's your partner, it's it's your colleague, it's everybody around it. The more you understand and the more points of view you can amalgamate into the offering that you give, I think the offering becomes better. And
Same.
so and I think it's true at the company level, and it's also true at the ecosystem level. Our ecosystem, one of the things I've been pushing from day one is to play well with others. And this is one of our three basic tenets. One of them is playing well with others. And the thing about playing well with others, it means easy integration. It means being open to collaboration and to partnership with everyone. And I think that this is something that last year at Formnext, I think this penny has dropped, at least the initial drop. There may be 2 more steps or something, but it has dropped for AM, I think. I
That's
think you
great.
see that the machine manufacturers are starting to think about APIs. I see other people. APIs are the very basic thing that you need for integration. If you don't have APIs, you're completely shut off and you're not playing well with others. That's so creating these APIs is one step. Releasing them to some people is another step. Releasing them to a wider audience is, the next step. But to begin with, at least have these APIs. Some players didn't have them, and some players still don't have them. So this is kind of, I'm kind of getting on a soapbox a little bit, but this is something that's really, really important, and I think that people are realizing it, and I feel gratified because I've been preaching it for so long, or at least it seems like so long to me. But I think that a lot of great things can happen from this, and if you look around, the big successes in AM, they don't just involve one, they're a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence.
Wow. I honestly wish that I had met you earlier in my career. I think that because you're saying a lot of these things, and I myself have adopted this with my partner in our own company, and I think that's a big proponent of women in 3D printing too, is a lot of these core values that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But for me to adopt them personally, I had to fail a little bit, we and figure out what was important. And I was actually just speaking with someone yesterday about this industry needing to be more people centric and people friendly. And I really like the phrase that you put to it, playing well with others.
Yes.
That's incredibly important. It's an easy concept to get, and I really hope that to our listeners, this really just inspires people to start thinking like that. 'Cause that's
Yeah, I
amazing.
hope so. I think it'll do good for everyone. I mean, people that have traditionally tried to keep the walled garden, it hasn't worked for them in the long run, in every industry almost. And so it really is a win-win. It's a little bit more work initially, yes, but I think it's totally worth it. And I can tell you that we from day one of the company, we thought about this before we even developed the software. We thought about how it would connect. So this was it was by design. It wasn't an afterthought. And again, this is because Moshe is so skilled and knows how to do these things. I take no credit, but I think that it makes our life so much easier. We can, whoever is willing to play with us, we play with them very easily and very well. And it really makes a difference. And sometimes people think it makes a difference for a small startup, but not for a large company. And that's actually not true. It's also good for the large companies. It just takes them longer to get there.
Exactly. Wow. Wise words. Amazing.
I hope I don't get crucified for the wise words.
Not on this platform, not with our audience. Okay, so next question is, what future developments are you excited to see in AM?
So we kind of touched on some of those, right?
Yes.
We touched about the applications and how I really want some boring ones.
Yeah.
And I'm always, I think everybody wants more materials, more applications. But I think that the importance of materials is now beyond just the base material, the raw material. It's also what you do with it and how you do with it. And that's much more finicky. And it takes a lot of expertise. So I think that the fact that the material companies have come into AM with a blast, like practically all of them, is not a coincidence. I think this is the time where they can really make a big impact and also kind of chart a course for themselves. Specialty materials are very important in some industries. Like, do you know that for trains, for example, have the highest requirement for fire retardant? I always thought it would be space, like in a space shuttle, but
Right.
apparently not. And it's kind of gruesome, but what they said was, in space, if there's a fire, you probably toast anyway. But in a train, if there's a fire, you can still save people, and you have to be able to save them.
Yeah.
I told you it's gruesome.
No, but I get it. I get it. And if you
And
think,
so
yeah,
fire retardant materials that are appropriate for trains are very specialty materials, and there
right,
aren't a lot of them yet for AM, and I hope there'll be more. It's just an example, but it's the materials.
right. Yeah, I am too. That would speed up development for a lot of other types of industries just
Hmm.
making
That's
things.
right. Hmm.
What are 3 tips you would give someone if they wanted to get into additive manufacturing?
So I think there are some tips that are good for any specialty area that you want to go into. My number one tip is to talk to people that are already there, so that you see, because there's the hype and there's the real world, and you you need to see that what it really is and what it really entails on a daily basis, on a conceptual basis, is really what you want, and it really fits your skills. I don't think, just because something is cool or amazing or whatever, doesn't mean everybody has to go to it. It's not for everybody. So I think you need to figure out if it's a good fit for what you have, and the way to do that is not just passively reading about it, but also going out there and talking to people. And I think one of the nice things about this ecosystem is that people will talk with you if you ask them. So find somebody who's doing, the kind of job that you want to do, maybe after you study, if you're thinking about a route to go to university first, and then, or whatever, and talk to them. I think that would be the most important tip. The second is to make sure that you have a solid foundation, and that might mean studying. So, you know, some people think there are jobs that anybody can do. Yeah, maybe. But I think you're better off if you have a solid foundation. And then when you get to those tough points, you have something to fall back on. I'm not saying you need a 4-year degree, maybe, or maybe it's just taking a course, or even an online course, or reading or studying something, but have some kind of foundation. That's the second thing. What's the third thing? The third thing is, as you're talking with people, pick the one that you connect with the most and ask them to be your mentor in this process. I really believe in mentorship. You mentioned Aura to Excellence in the beginning. That's part of Aura to Excellence, is a mentorship program for children where teenagers mentor younger kids.
Wow.
I think mentorship is super important. It's very empowering, although I hate that word, but it really is. And I think that it's a good practice to always have somebody that you can go to with questions, and actually tell them, I want a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I've had mentors my entire life, and I've mentored other people almost my entire life. And I think it's a very, very important relationship.
Couldn't agree more. So, going off of your first point, how would you recommend someone goes about finding someone to connect with, especially during COVID? It can be overwhelming, and with our industry, sometimes it's not as like at the surface. Like it's harder to find. So, like, what would you suggest?
So I would suggest looking, first of all, at publications, not just, like media, but also academic publications. So somebody that finished a master's degree in something that's interesting to you, and now they're working somewhere. So their master's is from 2 years ago, or a PhD, same thing. Or they did some kind of other academic paper. I find that that's a good way to find people that don't tend to interview to the press. And you can also find the people that do interview. Those will be harder for you to get their attention probably, because they have a lot of people vying for their attention.
Yeah.
But if you can get their attention, it's also a good source. So
Right.
I would say read a lot, and also kind of see what you connect to. You have to go a little bit deeper than just the title or just the fact that, oh, you know, you could tell me something. There has to be a reason why this person, so that you can articulate it to them when you approach them. I can tell you, by the way, when I approached Tessa, our co-founder, I didn't know her. My sister knew her and said, you know, you guys are going to get on really, really well. But it was, again, it was an issue of really cold calling a person,
Yeah.
and starting a relationship with them. And that's kind of what I did. I kind of looked at, and she didn't have very much of an online footprint at all.
Oh, wow.
Now she has a lot, because she has like a weekly piece she does, Tessa Picks, and so she has a huge a huge online footprint. But at the time she had really almost none.
Wow.
So I really did do a lot of background research on her, and I really tried to see how it would fit even before I approached her for the very first time. And of course it takes a while to go through the process. But
wow. That's really great advice. I really think a lot of people can benefit from taking that same approach. Just research, start somewhere, and just go for it.
yeah, and a lot of these people, they do their research and then they go out to industry.
Yeah.
And they're very appropriate for people starting out. You know, you don't want the head of Additive to tell you what an engineer that's like 4 levels or 5 levels down from him in the organization is doing. Maybe he did it once, but he did it 30 years ago. He's not a good source for you. You
Yeah.
want to actually get to the engineer. And the way to get to the engineer is that, and also LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is a really great resource.
Yes.
I don't think that enough young people are utilizing it properly, and it's not being like pushed academically either, but it is fantastic.
That's right. And
Fantastic.
Connect to everybody you know in LinkedIn. It'll open up your network and allow you to find more people. And then after you meet them, connect them. I don't advocate, I don't connect with people I don't know on LinkedIn. A lot of people ask, but I never do. It has to be somebody I know.
Yep.
That I've actually met. These days met in Zoom, but you know, not just out of the blue.
Right.
And if you do that, your network will expand, and you'll be able to ask people to refer you to the people you want to get to and talk with.
Love it. Love it. It was so great talking to you, Lee. This was truly amazing. I'm so excited for this episode to come out and for all of our audience to hear your wisdom drops.
All right. Well, good. Thank you very much for having me. I think this TIPE conference is amazing. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
I think Women in 3D Printing in general is a wonderful, wonderful organization that I'm very, very proud to help whenever I can.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the conference, doing all these speaker interviews and the podcast. I hope it gets our audience as excited as I'm getting to hear everyone speak.
My pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us at the Women in 3D Printing podcast TIPE Series. If you like the content, please hit that subscribe button, follow us on LinkedIn or other social media platforms.
We'd also like to give a shout out to our platinum sponsors, HP, Trump, GE Additive, Matter Hackers, and Dassault for making all of this even possible. So mark your calendars for January 27th to 28th next year in 2021.
And visit us at type3dprinting.com to save your seat. And feel free to drop us a line if you have any questions or feedback.